First contact and invasion. The day the Vexeri came was like any other, until it wasn't. Dr. Elena Reyes stood at her observatory console, eyes fixed on the readings that shouldn't exist. Impossible energy signatures bloomed across her screens, heralding the arrival of something beyond human comprehension. "This can't be right," she muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. But no amount of recalibration could erase the truth. They were here. Across the globe, others made the same discovery. Military radar operators watched in disbelief as objects larger than cities materialized in low Earth orbit. Civilian smartphones captured shaky footage of sleek, obsidian ships blotting out the stars. In New York, Tokyo, London, and 100 other cities, people poured into the streets, eyes turned skyward. A mix of awe and terror gripped the planet as humanity collectively held its breath, waiting for first contact. They didn't wait long. The message came simultaneously to every screen on Earth, broadcast in perfect renditions of each local language, a being that looked almost human. If humans had iridescent scales and eyes like swirling galaxies, appeared before them. "People of Earth," the alien intoned, voice resonant and cold. "We are the Vexari Dominion. Your planet has been chosen for integration into our empire. Resistance is futile and will result in unnecessary suffering. Submit, and you may yet find a place among the stars." For a moment, the world stood still. Then chaos erupted. Governments scrambled to respond, militaries mobilized, and civilians alternated between panic and defiance. In Washington, D.C., President Amelia Chen stood before a hastily assembled press conference, her face a mask of determination. "To the people of Earth, and to the Vexari who even now watch from above, hear me. Humanity will not bow. We will not submit. We are the children of explorers and revolutionaries, of dreamers and fighters. If it's a war you want, then a war you shall have." Her words echoed across the planet, a rallying cry for a species facing extinction. In orbital command stations and underground bunkers, military leaders drew up battle plans. They knew the odds were impossible, but humanity had beaten impossible odds before. The first strike came without warning. Vexeri energy weapons lanced down from orbit, targeting military installations and seats of government. The sky burned violet as advanced shields flickered and failed under the onslaught. But humanity wasn't defenseless. Years of secret space militarization programs bore fruit as hidden missile platforms revealed themselves, unleashing swarms of nuclear-tipped projectiles at the Vexeri fleet. Most were swatted from the sky like irritating insects, but a few found their mark. Atomic fire blossomed against Vexeri hulls, and for the first time, the invaders knew pain. On the ground, the war was already raging. Vexeri dropships deployed legions of biomechanical soldiers into major cities. They expected an easy conquest against primitive opponents. What they got was hell. In the ruins of Seoul, old women threw Molotov cocktails from shattered high-rises as Korean special forces ambushed alien patrols in sewers and subway tunnels. The streets of Rio de Janeiro became a kill zone as local gangs put aside their differences to wage guerrilla warfare against the invaders. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its diversity, its ability to adapt. Now that strength was turned to the art of war on a scale never before seen. Dr. Elena Reyes found herself far from her observatory, crouched in a makeshift bunker beneath the New Mexico desert. Her expertise in xenobiology made her a valuable asset in understanding the enemy. She pored over grainy footage of Vexeri physiology, searching for weaknesses. "They're not invincible," she announced to the haggard group of scientists and soldiers around her. "Their exoskeletons have weak points, and their vision. It's optimized for different wavelengths than ours. We can use that." Small advantages, but humanity would take every edge it could get. As the first week of the war came to a close, the situation looked grim. Major cities lay in ruins, billions were dead or displaced, and the Vexeri still held orbital superiority. But the invaders were learning a harsh lesson. Conquering humanity would not be the simple task they had imagined. In the smoldering wreckage of what was once Shanghai, a Chinese quantum physicist named Dr. Liu Wei made a breakthrough. Studying debris from a downed Vexeri ship, he uncovered principles that could revolutionize human energy weapons. The plans were disseminated globally through hidden networks, a spark of hope in the darkness. Humanity's defenders fought with desperate courage. Fighter pilots flew suicide missions against Vexeri capital ships. Hackers launched relentless cyberattacks, probing for weaknesses in alien networks. Every Vexeri soldier that fell was stripped of technology, each scrap of knowledge a precious resource. But for every small victory, there were devastating losses. The Vexeri brought the full might of their advanced civilization to bear. Entire continents were scared by exotic weapons. Millions more perished as battles raged across every corner of the globe. As the war entered its second month, President Chen received a grim report in the heart of a mountain's bunker. "Madam President," General Santos said, his voice heavy, "at the current rate, we have perhaps 3 months before total defeat. We need a game changer." Chen's eyes hardened as she surveyed the holographic map of Earth, red zones of Vexeri control spreading like a cancer. "Then we'll make one, General. Humanity stood on the brink before. We always find a way." Even as she spoke, that way was taking shape in hidden labs and secret facilities across the planet. Researchers worked feverishly, combining stolen Vexeri tech with the best of human innovation. New weapons were forged, strategies devised, and a plan, audacious and desperate, began to form. The Vexeri believed victory was assured. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, subjugated entire civilizations. Humanity was just another primitives to be broken and remade in the image of the Dominion. They were wrong. As Elena Reyes stared at the test results before her, a fierce grin spread across her face. "We've done it," she whispered. Then louder, to the entire lab, "We've cracked their bio-interface. This is how we fight back." The revelation spread like wildfire through the resistance. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity dared to hope, not just for survival, but for victory. The Vexeri had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, and now that giant was ready to show the stars what humans were truly capable of. As the sun set on another day of war, the people of Earth steeled themselves for the battles to come. They had suffered, bled, and endured, but they had also learned, adapted, and grown stronger. The real fight was just beginning. The underground resistance. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath New York City echoed with the sounds of humanity's defiance. What was once a transportation network had become a labyrinth of survival, a hidden city where the resistance planned its next move against the Vexeri occupiers. Colonel Sarah Donovan moved through the crowded passages, her battle-worn uniform a stark contrast to the civilians around her. She nodded to familiar faces. Doctors tending to the wounded, engineers jury-rigging equipment, children learning to fight alongside their parents. This was the new face of humanity, adaptable, resilient, and unbroken. Donovan reached the makeshift war room, really just an old maintenance office, filled with salvaged tech and hand-drawn maps. Inside, a diverse group of leaders from around the world connected via a secure, quantum-encrypted network. "Status report," Donovan barked, and the room fell silent. Dr. Elena Reyes, her lab coat stained and torn, spoke first. "The bio-interface breakthrough is holding. We've successfully hijacked several Vexeri drones and gathered critical intel on their command structure." A grizzled Australian Special Forces operator, Major Jack Cooper, chimed in next. "My team's been using the drones to map Vexeri patrol routes. We're seeing patterns, weaknesses we can exploit." "Good," Donovan nodded, "because we're running out of time. The Vexeri are pushing into our last free zones. We need a game changer, and fast." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a globe crisscrossed with Vexeri occupation zones. Red dominated the map, but pockets of blue, human-controlled areas, still stubbornly held out. "I might have something." A new voice cut in. The speaker was Zora Imam, a brilliant Pakistani computer scientist. "We've been analyzing Vexeri communications. They're afraid." A murmur ran through the assembled leaders. The idea that the seemingly invincible aliens could feel fear was both surprising and heartening. Zora continued, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Their reports talk about unexpected resistance and unacceptable casualties. More importantly, we've detected transmissions to their home fleet. They're calling for reinforcements." Colonel Donovan leaned forward, her mind racing with the implications. "So they're not as all-powerful as they want us to believe. How long until these reinforcements arrive?" "Best estimate, 3 months," Zara replied. The room erupted in urgent discussion. 3 months to turn the tide of a war that had already cost billions of lives. It seemed impossible, but impossibility had become humanity's specialty. "All right, people," Donovan's voice cut through the chatter. "We've got our window. Now we need a plan to make the Vexeri regret ever setting foot on our planet." As the resistance leaders debated strategy, similar scenes played out in hidden bunkers and secret bases across the globe. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but adversity had forged them into something stronger, more united than ever before. In the ruins of Moscow, Russian physicists worked alongside American engineers, perfecting weapons that could pierce Vexeri shields. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, indigenous trackers taught elite soldiers how to move unseen, even under the gaze of alien sensors. The Resistance's greatest weapon, however, was information. As more Vexeri technology fell into human hands, a clearer picture of the enemy emerged. Dr. Elena Rice led a team of xenobiologists in dissecting captured Vexeri soldiers, uncovering critical weaknesses in their physiology. "Their cellular structure is unlike anything we've seen," Elena explained to a rapt audience of resistance fighters. "But it's vulnerable to specific radiation frequencies. We can weaponize this." The revelation sparked a flurry of activity. Engineers began modifying human weapons to exploit this weakness, while others worked on protective gear to shield friendly forces. But it wasn't just about military might. The Resistance knew that to win this war, they needed the support of every human left on Earth. A network of underground radio stations and hidden internet nodes spread messages of hope and defiance. Artists created stirring propaganda that reminded people of humanity's greatest achievements. The pyramids, the Great Wall, landing on the moon. Visual reminders that humans had always done the impossible. In hidden schools, children learned not just reading and math, but survival skills and the history of human resistance against tyranny. They were the future, and the Resistance was determined that it would be a free one. As weeks passed, small victories began to accumulate. Vexeri patrols vanished without a trace. Supply lines were disrupted. Occupied cities erupted in carefully coordinated riots that tied up alien forces. The Vexeri responded with brutal efficiency, leveling entire city blocks to root out resistance cells. But for every haven they destroyed, 2 more sprang up. Humanity had become a hydra, impossible to stamp out completely. In her New York command center, Colonel Donovan received reports from around the world. A smile tugged at her lips as she read about a successful raid on a Vexeri research facility in Cape Town and the destruction of a major alien communications hub in the Andes. "We're bloodying their nose," Major Cooper grinned, reading over her shoulder. "But we need more than that to win this war." Donovan nodded grimly. "Agreed. It's time to take the fight to them. Zara, what's the status on Operation Trojan Horse?" The Pakistani scientist hologram flickered to life. "We're ready. The virus is prepped and the delivery system is in place. We just need the go-ahead." Donovan took a deep breath. What they were about to attempt was audacious, possibly suicidal. But if it worked, it could turn the tide of the entire war. "Do it," she ordered. Thousands of miles away, in a hidden facility beneath the Gobi Desert, Zora's fingers flew over a keyboard. The fruits of months of hacking, code breaking, and reverse engineering were about to be put to the test. With a final keystroke, she unleashed a digital plague upon the Vexari network, a virus built on the principles of the aliens' own technology, but infused with the creativity and adaptability of human programming. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, across the globe, Vexari systems began to falter. Shields flickered and died. Weapons misfired. Communication networks dissolved into chaos. In New York, Donovan watched the holographic display with bated breath. Huge swathes of red Vexari-controlled territory began to blink erratically. "This is our chance," she breathed, then keyed her global comm. "All resistance cells, initiate Operation Thunderstrike. I repeat, Thunderstrike is a go. Hit them hard, hit them fast. Show these alien bastards what happens when you try to conquer Earth." As her words echoed through hidden bunkers and secret bases, humanity rose as one. From the icy wastes of Antarctica to the sun-baked deserts of the Sahara, resistance fighters emerged from hiding. Years of preparation, of suffering and learning and adapting had led to this moment. Armed with weaponry that melded human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien tech, they struck at Vexari's strongholds worldwide. The occupiers, reeling from the cyber attack and caught off guard by the ferocity of the human assault, faltered. For the first time since the invasion began, they were on the defensive. As the battles raged, Colonel Donovan allowed herself a moment of hope. They had a long way to go, and victory was far from assured. But humanity had shown its teeth, and the Vexari were bleeding. The real war, she knew, was just beginning. But looking at the determination on the faces around her, Donovan felt a surge of pride. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together. And God help any alien force that stood in their way. Operation Thunderstrike. The world erupted in a symphony of chaos and hope. Operation Thunderstrike, humanity's boldest move yet against the Vexari occupiers, had begun. In the skies above what was once Dubai, Wing Commander Aisha Kazmi banked her hybrid fighter jet hard to port, narrowly avoiding a stream of Vexari energy fire. The aircraft, a marvel of human engineering and reverse-engineered alien tech, responded to her thoughts as much as her physical inputs. "Echo Squadron, form up on me," she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We've got a Vexari command ship to take down." As her squad fell into formation, Aisha allowed herself a grim smile. Just months ago, engaging the Vexari capital ship would have been suicide. Now, thanks to Operation Trojan Horse and humanity's leaps in weapons development, they had a fighting chance. The massive alien vessel loomed ahead, its shields flickering erratically thanks to the virus ravaging its systems. Aisha's targeting computer locked on to a weak point identified by resistance intel. "All units, fire on my mark," she ordered. A chorus of affirmatives rang out. 3, 2, 1, mark. A barrage of missiles streaked towards the Vexari ship, each warhead packed with a payload specifically designed to exploit alien vulnerabilities. The explosions that followed were spectacular, ripping through the enemy vessel's hull. As the command ship began to list, secondary explosions blossoming along its length, Aisha keyed her long-range comm. "Control, this is Echo Leader. Objective Alpha is down. I repeat, the Dubai command ship is destroyed." In the New York command center, Colonel Donovan's eyes widened at the news. "Confirmed. Echo Leader. Outstanding work." She turned to her staff, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "Get me a global status report now." The next hours were a blur of updates from around the world. In the seas off Japan, a joint fleet of human submarines and salvaged alien watercraft engaged Vexari extraction forces. The streets of Sao Paulo echoed with the sound of guerrilla fighters pushing back alien patrols. And in orbit, hastily retrofitted human spacecraft harried Vexari cruisers, exploiting the gaps in their defenses. It wasn't all good news. Resistance forces in Eastern Europe had been pushed back, and an attempt to liberate a Vexari processing center in Australia had ended in heavy casualties. But for the first time since the invasion, humanity was dictating the tempo of the war. As the first day of Operation Thunderstrike drew to a close, Dr. Elena Reyes burst into the command center, her eyes wild with excitement. "Colonel," she gasped, out of breath. "You need to see this. Now." Donovan followed Elena to a makeshift lab where a Vexari corpse lay on an examination table. The alien's iridescent scales were dull in death, its multiple limbs limp. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Donovan asked, her nose wrinkling at the acrid smell. Elena pointed to a holographic display of the alien's cellular structure. "We've been so focused on finding ways to kill them that we missed something crucial. Look at the genetic markers here and here." Donovan squinted at the display. "I'm not a biologist, Elena. What am I supposed to be seeing?" "Similarities," Elena breathed. "To us, Colonel, the Vexari. They're not naturally evolved. They're engineered. And part of that engineering, it's human." The implications hit Donovan like a physical blow. "Are you saying?" Elena nodded grimly. "The Vexari aren't just invaders. They're our descendants, a twisted, genetically modified version, but descendants nonetheless. Someone, sometime in the future, took human DNA and created them." The revelation spread through the resistance like wildfire, provoking a mix of disbelief, horror, and in some quarters, a perverse sense of pride. Humanity's future selves were terrifying in their power, but that power had come from human potential. As the shock wore off, a new determination set in. If humans were capable of becoming the Vexari, then they were capable of defeating them. The war raged on. Vexari reinforcements arrived, but found themselves facing the humanity that had learned, adapted, and grown far beyond what the aliens had expected to find. In the mountains of Tibet, Master Sergeant John Chen led a squad armed with prototype sonic disruptors. The weapons, tuned to frequencies that played havoc with Vexari neural networks, allowed them to neutralize a force 5 times their size without firing a shot. Off the coast of Madagascar, marine biologist turned resistance fighter Dr. Anita Patel used her knowledge of Earth's oceans to help human forces outmaneuver Vexari submersibles. The aliens' mastery of space meant little in the crushing depths and complex currents of Earth's seas. And in orbit, the tide of battle began to turn. Human ingenuity, combined with salvaged alien tech, gave birth to a new generation of space fighters. These nimble craft, piloted by the best Earth had to offer, ran rings around the larger, less adaptable Vexari ships. Wing Commander Kazmi found herself leading one such squadron. As her fighters darted between capital ships, exploiting weaknesses and sowing chaos, she felt a fierce pride in human accomplishment. "Control, this is Starhammer Actual," she reported after a particularly successful sortie. "Another Vexari carrier down. Our boys and girls are getting good at this space combat thing." Back on Earth, Colonel Donovan allowed herself a rare moment of optimism as she surveyed the latest battle reports. Human-controlled territory was expanding, slowly but surely pushing back the Vexari occupation. But the aliens were far from defeated. As humanity's resistance grew stronger, the Vexari response became more brutal. Entire cities were vaporized from orbit. Weapons of terrifying power, held in reserve until now, were unleashed upon population centers. The war had entered a new phase, bloodier and more desperate than ever before. Both sides knew that the fate of Earth, and possibly the future of the human species itself, hung in the balance. In her lab, Dr. Elena Reyes worked tirelessly to unlock more secrets from Vexari biology. The revelation of their human origins had opened new avenues of research, tantalizing possibilities that could tip the scales decisively. "We're close to something big," she told Donovan during one of their daily briefings. "If my theories are correct, we might be able to do more than just fight the Vexari. We might be able to cure them." Donovan raised an eyebrow. "Cure them? Of what?" Elena's eyes shone with the fire of scientific discovery, of being Vexari, to remind them of their humanity. It was an astounding concept, one that could redefine the entire conflict. But it was also fraught with ethical and practical concerns. Could they really cure an entire species? And more importantly, should they? As debates raged among resistance leadership, the war ground on. Humanity had proven its mettle, shown that it would not go quietly into the night. But the Vexari were still a formidable enemy, with resources and technology that dwarfed Earth's. The next phase of the conflict would determine not just the fate of the planet, but the very nature of what it meant to be human. As both sides girded themselves for the battles to come, one thing was clear: Earth would never be the same again. In hidden bunkers and orbital platforms, in ruined cities and pristine laboratories, humanity prepared for the final push. They had come so far, endured so much. Now, it was time to bring the fight to the Vexari, and to face the consequences of their own potential. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would emerge from this crucible of conflict. Humanity's greatest test was yet to come. The turning point. The war room buzzed with an energy that bordered on electric. Colonel Sarah Donovan stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the latest battle data from around the globe and in orbit. But it wasn't the familiar ebb and flow of conflict that had everyone on edge. It was the news Dr. Elena Reyes was about to deliver. "All right, Doctor," Donovan said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "You've got everyone's attention. What's this breakthrough you've been hinting at?" Elena took a deep breath, her eyes bright with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "We've done it. We've cracked the Vexari genetic code. Completely." A hush fell over the room. Elena continued, her words coming faster now. "It's more than just understanding their biology. We've figured out how they were made, why they were made, and most importantly, how to unmake them." Zara Imam, the computer scientist who had been instrumental in developing the Trojan horse virus, leaned forward. "Unmake them? What exactly do you mean?" "A targeted viral agent," Elena explained. "One that could revert the Vexari back to, well, to us. To human." The implications hung heavy in the air. Major Cooper was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "You're talking about genetically rewriting an entire species. The ethical implications alone are staggering." Donovan finished for him. "But so are the implications of letting this war continue. How sure are you that this would work, Doctor?" Elena's face was grim. "In controlled lab conditions, it's foolproof. But deploying it on a global scale against a technologically superior enemy, there are a lot of variables." The room erupted in debate. Some argued passionately for immediately weaponizing the virus, seeing it as their best chance to end the war. Others voiced concerns about the morality of such an action and the unforeseen consequences it might bring. As the arguments raged, a new alert flashed across the main display. Donovan's eyes widened as she read the incoming transmission. "Quiet," she barked, and the room fell silent. "We've got a new problem. The Vexari are preparing for something big. Really big." The holographic display shifted, showing a massive buildup of Vexari forces in orbit. Ships of a class they'd never seen before had arrived, dwarfing even the largest vessels humanity had faced so far. "Intel suggests they're preparing for a final push," Donovan continued, her voice tight. "They mean to end this, one way or another." The mood in the room shifted instantly. Whatever ethical debates they'd been having, the harsh reality of their situation came crashing back. "How long do we have?" Major Cooper asked, already mentally preparing battle plans. "Best estimate, 72 hours, Donovan replied. She turned to Elena. "Doctor, I hate to put you on the spot, but we need options. Can your virus be weaponized in that time frame?" Elena hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "Yes, it won't be pretty, and I can't guarantee wide dispersal, but we can have something ready." "Do it," Donovan ordered, And someone get me Wing Commander Casmi. If we're facing an orbital assault, I want our best pilots ready." As the room burst into frenzied activity, Donovan felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. The decisions made in the next few days would determine the fate of humanity. There would be no second chances. In orbit, Wing Commander Aisha Kazmi floated in zero gravity, her eyes fixed on the looming shapes of the Vexari Armada. Even from this distance, the sheer scale of the alien fleet was overwhelming. "All wings, report in," she commanded, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. One by one, her squadron leaders checked in. Each voice was tense but determined. These were Earth's finest pilots, flying the most advanced machines humanity had ever produced. But would it be enough? A flash of movement caught Aisha's eye. A small Vexari scout ship, venturing closer than the others. Without conscious thought, her hand moved to the control stick. "Echo 3, Echo 7, on me. Let's remind these bastards why they should keep their distance." 3 fighters peeled away from the human formation, engines flaring as they accelerated towards the intruder. The Vexari ship, realizing it was outmatched, turned to flee. But Aisha and her wingmen were faster. A quick burst of laser fire from Echo 7 clipped the alien vessel's engine. It spiraled out of control, trailing debris. "Nice shot, 7, Aisha commended. "All units, form up and—" Her order was cut short as proximity alarms blared. The crippled Vexari ship was on a collision course with them, its reactor core going critical. "Evasive maneuvers," Aisha yelled, but it was too late. The scout exploded in a blinding flash of light and energy. When Aisha's vision cleared, her heart sank. Echo 7 was gone, vaporized in the blast. Echo 3's ship drifted lifelessly, its pilot hopefully only unconscious. As she called for a rescue team, Aisha's grip tightened on her controls. This skirmish was just a taste of what was to come. The real battle hadn't even begun. Back on Earth, in a secret facility deep beneath the Rockies, Dr. Elena Reyes worked feverishly. Her lab was a whirlwind of activity, researchers and technicians rushing to prepare the Vexari-targeted virus for deployment. "We're pushing the boundaries of science and ethics," she muttered to herself as she peered into a microscope. The viral agents swirling in the Petri dish before her had the power to rewrite the destiny of 2 species. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing. A commotion at the lab entrance drew her attention. Colonel Donovan strode in, flanked by security personnel. Her face was grim. "Doctor, we've got a problem," Donovan said without preamble. "Our deep cover agents in the Vexari command structure just sent an emergency transmission. The aliens know about the virus." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "How?" "Our security protocols." "We're good but not perfect," Donovan cut her off. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is that they're accelerating their timetable. The final assault isn't coming in 72 hours. It's coming now." Alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Elena's mind raced. The virus wasn't ready, not for full deployment. But perhaps. "Colonel," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I have an idea. It's risky, probably insane, but it might be our only shot." Donovan's eyes met hers, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever Elena was about to propose, it would be desperate and dangerous. But in the face of extinction, what choice did they have? "I'm listening, Doctor," Donovan said. "What's the plan?" As Elena began to outline her audacious strategy, the first waves of the Vexari assault broke against Earth's orbital defenses. The final battle for humanity's future had begun. In bunkers and bases around the world, resistance fighters prepared for what might be their last stand. In the skies and in orbit, pilots and crew readied themselves for the fight of their lives. And in a hidden lab beneath the mountains, a small team of scientists raced against time, carrying with them the hopes of an entire species. The fate of Earth, of humanity itself, hung in the balance. The next few hours would determine whether the human race would survive to see another dawn, or if the Vexari would at last complete their conquest. The endgame had arrived. Triumph of humanity. The sky burned. From her vantage point in the mobile command center, Colonel Sarah Donovan watched as streaks of fire crisscrossed the atmosphere. Each flash represented a life-or-death struggle between human and Vexari forces. The planet's fate hung in the balance, decided by these desperate skirmishes fought in the void. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Major Cooper's voice was tense but controlled. "Orbital defense platforms, Alpha through Delta, are holding, but Echo's taken heavy damage. Ground-based ion cannons are operational, but we're running low on power cells." Donovan nodded grimly. They were bloodying the Vexari nose, but at a terrible cost. Earth's defenders were outnumbered and outgunned. Without Dr. Reyes' virus, it would only be a matter of time before the aliens overwhelmed them. "Any word from Casmi?" she asked. As if on cue, a static-filled transmission cut through the command center speakers. "Control, this is Starhammer Actual. We've a opening. Repeat, we've found opening in their defenses." Donovan leaned in, her heart racing. "Say again, Starhammer. You're breaking up." The transmission cleared for a moment. "There's a weak point in the Vexari flagship shields. If we hit it hard enough, we might be able to create a breach. But we'll need everything we've got." This was it. The chance they'd been waiting for. Donovan keyed her global comm. "All units, this is Control. Converge on Starhammer's coordinates. This is our shot. Let's make it count." As humanity's remaining forces rallied for a desperate assault, Dr. Elena Reyes and her team raced against time in a retrofitted shuttle. The experimental viral payload was secured in the cargo hold, ready for deployment. "We're approaching the coordinates," the pilot announced, his voice tight with tension. "But that's the heart of the Vexari fleet. We'll be torn apart before we get close enough." Elena's grip tightened on her harness. "We have to try. Everything depends on this." The shuttle shuddered as it accelerated, plunging into the maelstrom of battle. Outside, human and Vexari ships clashed in a deadly dance. Beams of energy and streams of missiles crisscrossed the void, turning space itself into a war zone. In her fighter, Wing Commander Aisha Kazmi led the charge. "All wings, form up on me. We're punching a hole for the package to get through." Her squadron fell into formation, a bristling array of Earth's finest pilots and machines. As one, they unleashed a barrage against the weak point in the Vexari flagship's defenses. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a flash of light that outshone the stars, a section of the massive ship shields collapsed. "Now," Kazmi yelled. "Doctor, you've got your opening. Make it count." Elena's shuttle streaked towards the breach, engines straining. Vexari point defense systems came to life, filling space with a lethal web of energy beams. The shuttle jinked and weaved, taking hits but pressing on. "We're not going to make it," the pilot growled, fighting to keep the craft on course. Elena unstrapped herself. "Get us as close as you can. I'll do the rest." Before anyone could stop her, she grabbed the viral payload and raced to the airlock. With trembling fingers, she donned an emergency suit. "Doctor, what are you doing?" Donovan's voice crackled over the comm. "That's a one-way trip." "It's the only way to be sure," Elena replied, her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her. "Tell my family I love them." With that, she cycled the airlock and launched herself into space, the precious cargo clutched to her chest. The void embraced her, and for a moment, all was silent and still. Then a Vexari tractor beam locked on, pulling her towards the flagship's gaping wound. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. The aliens were doing her work for her. As she passed through the breach, Elena activated the payload's dispersal mechanism. A cloud of shimmering particles erupted around her, quickly spreading through the ship's ventilation systems. On the bridge of the Vexari flagship, alarms blared. The ship's commander, a towering figure of iridescent scales, and cold, alien eyes roared orders to contain the breach. But it was already too late. The virus worked with terrifying speed. Vexari crew members began to convulse, their bodies twisting and changing. Scales fell away, revealing pink human skin beneath. Extra limbs withered and disappeared. Chaos engulfed the Vexari fleet as ship after ship reported similar transformations. Centuries of genetic engineering were undone in a matter of minutes, leaving confused, terrified humans where once there had been implacable alien conquerors. In orbit and on the ground, the fighting gradually ceased as the Vexari forces quite literally lost the will to continue the invasion. The command structure collapsed, leaving individual ships and units to fend for themselves. Hours passed, then days. The enormity of what had happened began to sink in. 1 week after the release of the virus, Colonel Donovan stood before a hastily assembled council of Earth's remaining leaders. The mood was a mix of exhaustion, disbelief, and cautious hope. "The war is over," Donovan announced, her voice carrying the weight of all they had endured. "The Vexari threat has been neutralized, but we face a new challenge now." She gestured to a group of former Vexari, now fully human, who stood nervously at the edge of the room. "These people, and millions like them, need our help. They were our enemies, yes, but they're also victims. And in a very real sense, they're us." The room erupted in debate. Some called for punishment, others for integration. The road ahead would not be easy. But as Donovan looked out over the assembly, she felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity had faced its greatest trial and emerged victorious. They had proven their strength, their adaptability, and most importantly, their capacity for compassion. The stars had once held terror for Earth. Now, they beckoned with possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Donovan knew that humanity would face them together, stronger and wiser for all they had endured. As the council debated the shape of Earth's future, Donovan's thoughts turned to Elena Reyes. The doctor's sacrifice had saved them all, and her legacy would live on in the very DNA of the people she had saved, both human and former Vexari alike. The war was over. The healing could begin, and somewhere out there in the vast expanse of space, new adventures awaited a humanity that had finally come into its own. The Vexari had come to conquer Earth, believing it to be an easy target. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant and filled it with a terrible resolve. It was, indeed, a huge mistake, one that had ultimately led not to Earth's downfall, but to its triumph. As the sun set on this new era of human history, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again.